Hello, everybody. You all are on mute, so you can't respond. There's a lot of you on the line, so and I appreciate that. I'm glad you're all there. We'll turn off the mute towards the end of the call so you can have we have some opportunity for comments. But in the meantime, I think it's probably best from a noise perspective to have just sort of one channel open at the moment. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully you all can see me. You can type in notes on the line and on the WebEx, and Brett will try to figure out how to connect you if you're not well connected. Joining, we're really excited to do this. I'd asked Asmar and Stevie and Brett to put together a little more high-tech way of communicating so that we can have more FaceTime, given the fact that we're spread across tens of thousands of kilometers and the ocean. I think we need to use technology as much as we can. So thanks, and this is the first of this format. We'll try to do it as much as we can and get better at it as we go. I had a couple things before I start, just to tell you what we're sort of doing today. I thought I'd start off this series of breakfast briefings, and breakfast is, of course, depends on your time zone. We're here in Hong Kong, we're on brunch. Australia's at lunchtime, and it's in the middle of the late evening for after dinner drinks for the U.S. Well, this is the first of the series. I thought I'd do an introduction to how I talk about the Asia-Pacific region as a whole, how I'm representing you to the outside world and to our partners and colleagues across TNC. So that you know what I'm saying, and that we can all get, I think, a little bit more in sync and in tune with our global message around conservation and around the global challenges, global solutions, and the new campaign. So that's the start, and then we'll go through from a going forward perspective over the course of the next 6 months or so. We'll have something like this, questions and answers, presentations, a little bit of a talk show format for each of the other programs and projects that we have in the region. And we'll record them, and we'll let you know where those are so you can access them. You can forward them to donors if that's appropriate, and you can use them with your staff who haven't been able to get online to join us live. So that's the plan. This is the 25th year of the Asia Pacific region in the region of being TNC in the region. And so that's we're sort of kicking off that year-long celebration of 25 years here, starting from our beachhead, just a few weeks sailing from Hawaii in Palau. We've grown enormously, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. And this is an attempt to help everybody understand what we're all doing and share some of the information that we have about what we've got going. So that's what I'll do, and then we'll do a little bit of questions and answers. Louisa Ho, our colleague here in Hong Kong, is going to grill me with some very difficult questions, and I'll do my best to answer those after we wrap up. So let me just kind of run you through the PowerPoint presentation that I've used. I think I did this last for the AP Council meeting. And as by ways of examples of showing the work that we do and how it fits within the global campaign architecture. So we start off with with Asia Pacific and our priorities, and then I usually talk a little bit about, of course, how we're based and what we do. Switch to the next slide. And this is a good slide, I think, to give people a sense of what what the scope and size of the organization is. So I always try to set this off. Another thing that to help set the tone with discussions with donors, particularly, or partners, is our lists of our boards, which are very influential folks across the region and the globe. And so that's also a helpful way to start your presentations. And then we talk a little bit about our vision and our goals. And the goals really are breaking down into these 5 categories at this point. And it's climate, land, rivers or freshwater, ocean, and cities. Cities is the newest addition to this. The other areas we've been working on for quite a long time. And a lot of this is really in development and exciting stuff, exciting new areas for us to be working. So we're pleased to be sort of in the mature phase with a number of these projects in the Asia Pacific, but also developing for the whole Conservancy some of the other ones. As you know, we've just gone through a conservation by design refresh. Next slide, there we go. And this really, you'll see some of this documentation coming out and the WebExes in the last few weeks. And this, I think, doesn't change much from how we think about our work in terms of conservation by design, but it really layers in another way of categorizing what we do, how we work, protecting, transforming, and inspiring. And then in Asia Pacific, you think about how we work and why we work, and this is a good slide that encapsulates a lot of that, the value that we bring to the region and what the important things to protect and think about are. From 60% of the global population, the huge economies here, forests, oceans, rivers, grasslands are so important to how Asia works. The other way of slicing it is sort of along our 5 different priorities, climate, land, water, oceans, and cities. And you can see we have, and this is really sort of a graphic in progress, you can see we have a lot of overlap with those 5 priorities. And this is, again, I don't mean to be completely inclusive, including everything that we do in this presentation. I just mean to give people a bit of a taste of how we work and where we're doing the work we're doing. So I'll walk through these a little bit, and the way I talked about this to the Asia Pacific Council in November was through this lens of climate, land, water, oceans, and cities. So if we can go to the next slide. On the climate front, we're doing a lot in Asia Pacific. China has been a big leader in terms of forest carbon accounting, reforestation. Indonesia has been the global leader on REDD+ and demonstrations and carbon emissions through forestry and improved lower impact logging. So these are important big projects. In addition, we've got a whole host of adaptation science and advising going to our partners in local communities around the region. We can go to the next slide. Lands, which is sort of the heart of TNC, how we've always worked. You can see that in China, in Mongolia, and Australia, we're working on big chunks of those countries to do some basic land protection. How do we get people to value natural lands and take steps to put those lands into protection? And those places, I think, are really great indicators of that. And then one of the things which is new for us in terms of land protection is the RAFT program. And this is about really engaging in the supply chain for timber to reduce deforestation in the region, which is a huge issue, both from a climate perspective, but also from a biodiversity and ecological systems perspective. Head to water. On the waterfront, probably our oldest program here, and one that was pioneered with our great science staff in China and our policy and science staff in the U.S., is the work on the Yangtze River. And that has grown into what we are calling now the China Global Water Center. And to focus really on future dams in China and globally, working in China as well as around the world on the design, the smart design of hydropower facilities, as well as watershed planning and water funds, to bring that concept from Latin America, a water fund concept which started in Latin America, to our region as well. So this is an exciting growth, progression of something that started very small and fairly local, even though on the 3rd biggest river in the world, and now is a global priority for TNC. We'll be excited to sponsor the Global Hydropower Association, International Hydropower Association meeting in May this year, where we'll be announcing the creation of this China Global Water Center within the China program. And our newest projects are in Zhejiang, which is China's Silicon Valley, for those of you who don't know it. We've been asked by the governor and the party secretary in Zhejiang to help to do watershed planning and create a water fund. And then finally, a new and very exciting project in Australia around the Murray-Darling River, where we're really bringing private capital to increase sustainability of the Murray-Darling Basin, which is one of the most over-appropriated, overused basins in the world, but critical to the health of that river. We're fortunate to sit here in Hong Kong on the edge of the biggest ocean on the planet and one of the most productive from a fisheries perspective, and so the development of those resources through a more responsible lens has been a priority of ours for a long time. Mostly in the past, it has been in coastal fisheries and focusing on helping to get local people more able to control and manage their local fisheries. And this work has again started in Palau many years ago and has spread through Indonesia. We're now focused and working on the coast of China, the south coast of Australia, and all across Indonesia, which is really one of the major points for our work in Indonesia, as well as designing new financing mechanisms for huge protected areas in Indonesia on the oceans, and the sustainable management of the coral triangle, which is really the gem of global biodiversity from a coral perspective. One last slide on this front. The Resilient Cities priority is one that really just sprung up at the behest of the Global Board, and really it was one of these classic TNC moments where a number of programs around the world had started off on working and engaging in cities. In Texas, Houston, in New York, in Los Angeles, here in Hong Kong. All of these programs had started thinking, how do we bring the conservation message to people in cities? How do we make cities sustainable? How do we get people activated and engaged and inspired on conservation? At the same moment, the Global Board was saying the same thing. We were actually on the ground doing these things in these different cities, including here in the region, and the Global Board was saying, how are we going to engage people in cities around the world? And so that's come together to last fall start the creation of a Resilient Cities priority. So one of the 5 of our major campaign priorities now is the Resilient Cities piece. Like I mentioned, the work we're doing here in Hong Kong around leadership development, the Hong Kong cleanup, engaging people, getting them out on the ground is critical, I think, to engaging people of Hong Kong who are decision leaders in the region. In Shanghai, the China program has will just open next month an urban wetlands preserve to engage the world's biggest city, one of the world's biggest cities, 30 million people in the mission of the Nature Conservancy. Huge opportunity for us in Shanghai. And as I mentioned before, in Zhejiang, China's Silicon Valley, engaging the government and people there on water funds is another way of engaging and the populations in cities that will be increasingly making decisions about the natural resources that we care about. So that's the way I generally talk about this work. And if you'll go to the next slide, another way of thinking about this is the stuff we're doing and the stuff that's in development. And again, this list is not completely inclusive or doesn't include everything, but you'll see that on climate, land, water, oceans, and cities, we have a number of mature programs and then a number of projects that are in development. And I think that's a smart way to keep moving forward, to keep pushing ourselves to come up with new stuff, to address new issues, to solve new problems across the region. And then finally, we have a few scoping exercises in the midst of scoping. We have strong interest from our partners in New Zealand, where we've long had a small presence, and government has recently asked us to engage with them more because they know that we have excellent programs across the Pacific and are looking for ways to influence the development curve for those small Pacific Island developing nations. So we're scoping that work in New Zealand. The country of Malaysia, the governor of Sabah State has asked us to advise them on sustainable forestry. This really falls under the RAFT program. It may lead to something, but mostly we are using this as an opportunity to get to know a little bit better some of the work in Malaysia. We're thinking about Singapore as a potential engagement platform for the region, and Michael Looker is involved in the scoping on this. And then with Japan as well, we've had a number of invitations both from the foundation community and the government to engage with them on advising on development, overseas development assistance for Japan. So these are, I think, opportunities to increase the sustainability, the revenue streams that can support our work across the region. So that's really all I have from a overarching perspective in terms of what we do. And I asked Louisa to come together and have a sort of a brief conversation after this first 15 minutes worth of overview, and so we can plumb the depths a little bit